Thank you, Daniel. And for more on this, you can read Daniel's article on the subject in Middle East Quarterly, which goes much more in depth and really illustrates the myth of the current Palestinian population narrative. And now I am pleased to welcome our keynote speaker, Congressman Randy Fine. Randy Fine serves as the U.S. Representative for Florida's 6th Congressional District and is the first Jewish Republican elected to Congress from Florida. He is a third-generation Floridian who built 3 successful companies before retiring at 40 to focus on both family and public service. The son of public educators and a product of public schools, he earned his undergraduate degree, magna cum laude, from Harvard College while working full-time. He later graduated from Harvard Business School as the youngest MBA in his class and a Baker Scholar, the school's highest academic honor. As a former Florida state representative, Randy championed American interests in the Middle East and defended Western values against regional threats. A steadfast advocate for Israel and Jewish rights. He is committed to strengthening U.S.-Israel relations, having joined an MEF delegation hosting the Knesset only a little while ago. And now, as the newest member of the U.S. House of Representatives, Randy will work tirelessly to support the defeat of Hamas, secure the release of the remaining hostages, and ensure the enduring strength of the U.S.-Israel partnership. Please give a warm welcome to Congressman Randy Fine.
Wow, I ought to hire that guy to write my speeches. So I was like, that sounds pretty good. Well, thank you all for being here. It is an honor to be here. I am the newest member of Congress, so I don't have that much to talk about in terms of what I've accomplished. I've only been there 6 weeks, although I think some of them have been there for 60 years. I don't know how much they've accomplished. But you have, I've had 2 very, very intelligent academics speak, and now you've got a politician. And so I want to apologize for that. I'd like to tell you a little bit about me, my background, how I got into this place, and I want to talk about my thoughts on how we got to where we are in the Middle East, and then talk about, I think, how we get out of it. And I might tell you a little secret, because I think this group would like what I'm going to share. But I want to start by thanking you. This is a room that speaks the truth. It's not afraid of the political correctness, which, as you'll learn, I am not. I'm the guy who says on Twitter, bombs away. But you're not afraid to call out evil where it exists. You're willing to take the fight to those who deserve it. And so you're people after my own heart. And so thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for inviting me. So I'm a third generation Floridian, as I said. I'm a Jewish kid. I grew up in Kentucky, and I tell that so people understand how I became. My father was a college professor. You go where you can get tenure. He got tenure at the University of Kentucky. We're actually Floridians. And it was not an easy place for a Jewish kid to grow up in the 70s and the 80s. They used to call me a Kentucky Fried Jew. It was not a term of endearment. It was what they wanted to do to me. So I had a tough childhood. And I tell this story now more than I used to because I want people to understand. And when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I went to the hospital 19 times. And I went because groups of kids would chase me and would beat me because of who I was and who I am, because I was Jewish. Maybe it's because I was like smart and chubby and all those things too, but fundamentally they didn't like who I was. They didn't like my family, they didn't like my parents. And one day when I was 13 years old, I came home and I told my mom that never again was I going to be afraid to be who I was, and never again was I going to let people do that to me. And I will, without telling the details of the story, 1 stick later, that I picked up and used, there wasn't a 20th trip to the hospital. And I learned from that in that moment that the way that you respond to the people who hate the Jews is in the language that they understand. We are not one giant human family. We do not sit around a drum circle and solve all of our problems together. The other thing I told my mom, I said, Mom, what's the best university in the country? You'll get a kick out of this. She said Harvard. Maybe it was true back then. And I said, Mom, is that in Kentucky? And she said, no. And so that's where I decided I want to go to college. And now look, people think I'm smart because I went there, but Harvard's got to take someone from everywhere. And you know, when you're the kid from Kentucky who can read and he's got a pair of shoes, you get the spot. And so that is why I got to go. But when I went there, my parents did not support my decision to go because I could have gone to the University of Kentucky for free. So I started my first business in order to pay my way through school. I had to pay my way through school in real time. And my idea turned out to be a little bit better idea than I thought. I was the kid who couldn't afford meat. When he was a freshman, I had 100 employees my sophomore year, and I graduated 4 years later and was the youngest person taken to Harvard Business School in about 30 years because I had built a fairly big company. And I went ahead and I built 2 more companies. That's what I did. I built businesses. That's what I knew how to do. And then I turned 40. And I had 2 sons, Jacob and David, who I'll talk a lot about in my remarks. And I decided that I had missed the first 6 years of Jacob's life. Because building my 3rd company, I was traveling the world. I was going all over the place. And I actually left my wife at the hospital after she had him. That's how busy our business was. And I turned 40 and I said, I've had enough. My wife asked me what I wanted for my 40th birthday. She asked me if I wanted a motorcycle. I said, all I have is my brain. She asked me if I wanted a red sports car. I said, unless there's something you're not telling me, I don't think I have anything to compensate for. She asked me if I wanted a girlfriend. I said, I can't keep you happy. Why would I try to do this twice? And so I told her what I wanted to do is retire, and that's what I did on my 40th birthday, and I thought I was done. And then 8 months later, my 1st grade son came home and he told me he hated math. Now, we're a Jewish family. Had he come home and he said, I hate running, I would have been like, well, me too, and that would have been that. But in our family, you're not allowed to hate math. And I didn't, they were teaching him math this crazy Common Core way. I went to the school, I met with the principal. The principal told me I wasn't qualified to have an opinion about my kid's education because I didn't have a degree in academic administration. I said my degrees from Harvard aren't worth that much, but I ought to be able to handle 1st grade math. Now maybe today we wouldn't say that anymore, but I said I ought to be able to handle these things. And so in order to convince my wife to put our son in private school, I threatened to run for office. I didn't actually run for office, I threatened to run for office. Turns out, to become a candidate to run for office in Florida, you only have to fill out 2 pieces of paper. You don't have to get anything notarized. I went and saw my wife. See, neither of us grew up with a lot of money. And to us, sort of only rich kids went to private school. And I remember thinking, I'd rather my kid be like a rich kid who knows math than nice and dumb. And so I've got to figure out a way to get him into private school. So I came up with this bluff that I'm going to run for office. And so I went and showed these papers to my wife. I said, wait a minute, you've got to put Jacob in private school. He's got to learn math. Because he ain't going to get anywhere in his looks or personality, just like his dad. And so he's got to learn math. And she said, you want to put him in private school? I said, yes. She goes, good, so do I. And I said, good. And I put the papers in the trash. And she asked me, this running for office thing, are you interested in doing it? I said, not really. She's like, is it a job? I don't know. I don't know much about it. She said, do you think you'd be good at it? So you get to talk, and I'm good at that. So I don't know. And I didn't think anything else about it. I'd been retired for 8 months. It was the best 8 months of my life. 3 days later, I was watching TV, which is what I did while my kids were in school. And my phone rang. It was the local newspaper. I said, I have a subscription. I'm good. They go, no, I'm the political reporter with Florida Today. I see that you have filed to run for office. Your papers are kind of rumpled, but I can make them out. So I'm like, I think like the garbage man must have seen these or something. So what happened? I run upstairs and I find my wife and I say, Wendy, do you know what happened to those papers? And she said, yeah, I mailed them in. And I said, why? She said, either you're going to find something else to do or I'm going to find somewhere else to live. And that's actually how I became an elected official. Now it turns out that when you don't actually want the job, thank you. It turns out when you don't actually want the job, you're liberated to actually do the things that you want. Because I always told voters, I'm like, I never wanted this job in the first place. So if you want to vote for the other guy, be my guest. I'm happy to go home. And then my wife will stand up and go, no, please vote for him. But when I got to the Florida legislature, never having been to Tallahassee, never having thought that I'd get involved in politics, I had made a promise to my kids when I did this. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make sure that you all don't have the kind of life that I did. 6-year-old and a 3-year-old Jewish boy. Said, they're my 2 sons. You're not going to go through the things that I went through. And so I worked on those in the Florida legislature. Any of you from Florida? Do we have the kind of problems with anti-Semitism in Florida you're going to see in the rest of the country? We have some, but we do not. See, in Florida, if you do this nonsense at a university campus, guess what happens? you get invited to go somewhere else. If you do this stuff, if you teach, you get invited to go somewhere else. And I will tell you why. I'm a terrible politician. I don't take credit for things that I didn't do. But I don't mind taking credit for the things that I did. And we did that because I passed one bill every year of the 8 years that I was there that said kids in Florida are going to be safe. And they are. They are safe in Florida. We did something unique. I came up with this idea. I said, look, this is a simple solution. Let's just say you got to treat anti-Semitism the same way you treat all the other groups that you want to protect. We're not going to tell you how to deal with anti-Semitism, University of Florida. We're just going to make you take your code that you use for racism. See, if you call a black kid the N-word, it takes about 10 seconds for you to get invited to go get an education somewhere else. And by the way, that's how it should be. The Ku Klux Klan shouldn't be able to go burn a cross on the college green. That's how it should be. But somehow when it comes to Jews, everyone discovers free speech. And so I said, look, we're not going to do that. We're just going to copy and paste your code for racism, for anti-Semitism. You're going to delete the word black. You're going to put in the word Jew. You're going to delete the word racism. You're going to put in anti-Semitism. And all of a sudden, the problems went away. In fact, it's been used over 300 times. No one's ever litigated against the bill. The bill may be unconstitutional, but no one's ever litigated against it. You want to know why? Because the only thing many of these people hate more than Jews is protecting the groups that they care about. And if this bill was struck down, so would all 60 years of protections for the groups that they care about. So I did this. I put up with a lot. I want to tell you two stories. First, I got this nickname, the Hebrew Hammer, which I fought for a while, and then I was like, fine, I accept it. And so at one point, after one of the dust-ups with what I call the Gaza Arabs, because that's what generally they are, I refuse to use the term Palestinian, and we'll talk about that. But I said, these terrorists, I called them animals. And CARE, they love me. They got really angry because I said, these people are animals and they're terrible and bad things should happen to them. And they did what they do. These people are very good at what they do. They bombarded the speaker's office with complaints. They said I had called all Palestinians animals. No, I hadn't. I had said Palestinian terrorists. I guess they're the ones who conflated the two words, not me. And they demanded that I apologize because I had called Palestinians animals. And the speaker got so many phone calls. He said, please just go apologize. I said, fine, I'll apologize. So we had a press conference. They came in, I said, I apologize to all the rats, snakes, and pigs for comparing you to The other story I'll tell you is we had this problem. If you see in other parts of the country where people will take their cars and they will block the road. They will block it. Somehow, it is considered peaceful protesting to keep a pregnant woman from getting to the hospital. I don't know how this became okay. It's another form of terrorism. So I passed a bill that said you could run them over. So CARE, same group, said they were going to come and they were going to protest outside my house. Newspaper calls, they go, what would you say to these mostly peaceful protesters? I would say, I hope they only block the street 4 wide. And I said, why? I said, then I don't have to back up. Do you think they blocked the street in front of my house? They did not, because I spoke their language. They stayed across the street, where they have every right to be. So how did I get here? Well, I had 8 years in the Florida house. We did all these things I've talked about. I asked my wife if I could retire. She said, no, not until our kids go off to college. So 6 months ago, I got elected to the Florida Senate. It was great. Big night, excited. I'm not going to be on the ballot for 4 years. I get a cycle off. It's fantastic. 2 weeks later, the president calls. And he says, I might want you to come and help. And I said, all right, we talked about a number of jobs in the administration where I might be able to help. And at the end of that, I go, sir, I'm really happy to be in the Senate. I don't need a job. I don't particularly want to move to Washington. But I will tell you this. I believe that God saved your life so that you could save the world. And if you need my help to wash toilets in the White House, I will be there. I presume they're gold, but I will be there. And my wife said, why did you offer that? You don't wash toilets at home. So, and then at the end of the call, he goes, I just picked Mike Waltz to be my national security advisor. Maybe you can go do that. I'm like, sir, let's just keep talking. 3 days later, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, this has now happened to me twice. 3 days later, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, I'm taking a nap. It's what retired people do. And my wife starts yelling at me. It's what happens to married people. And so she wakes me up yelling, not uncommon. And I wake up and she says, Randy, why are my friends calling me, telling me you're running for Congress? I have no idea. And so I go and I find that the president has announced online that I'm running for Congress. I have his complete and total endorsement, and I'll be great. And so that's how I ended up running for Congress. And here I am 6 months later. Again, there is value in getting these roles when you don't actually want them. It means you can say what you think. It means that you can do what you believe, which is what, if you can't tell, I don't tend to hold back. So let's talk about my view of what's going on in the Middle East, and then my ideas on how to solve it. I think that we fundamentally face three problems, and our earlier speakers talked about them. I'll try to talk about them in a less academic way, I guess, because I'm just not as smart as they are. I think the left is rooted in a view that all cultures are equal and that we have to respect them all. Now, there came a time in this world where there were cultures where they ate people. That was like a mainstream, it's hundreds of years ago, but there were cultures that eating people was a good idea. If it was today, the left would say, this is great, keep eating, yum, yum. But there was a time when we said, no, that's not okay. There were cultures that believed in child sacrifice. We said, no, that's not okay. But somehow we're now told that all cultures are evil, which leads to the second problem. There's evil in this world. We are not one giant human family. It's a sad thing to say, but it's the truth. We can't solve all of our problems by sitting around a drum circle and just talking it out. There is good and there is bad. And the problem is too much of the world has forgotten that. And then the third part of the problem is, and it's been referenced, a lot of people just don't like Jews. I mean, I don't think it's that complicated. I saw it my whole life. And why? I think fundamentally at the end of the day, there's an element of jealousy towards it. Because no group has been treated worse over thousands and thousands of years. Look, hatred of us, we're the original form of hate. It's in the Bible. We were slaves in Egypt. You can go read about it. And so I think that yet, after every one of these horrific incidents, Jews somehow figure out how to come back. I learned this from my grandmother. When I came home from those trips to the hospital, my grandmother would call me. My grandmother was a survivor of the pogroms in Russia. Before she came to America, one day people came to her village. She had 11 brothers and sisters and 2 parents. She ended up at the bottom of a pile where 2 of her brothers survived, but 9 of her siblings and both of her parents died. She had to lay there for hours because they were so heavy that she was unable to get out of the pile on her own. She felt her family literally grow cold. So when I'd have these horrible things happening, my grandmother would call me and say, number 1, it could be a lot worse. And number 2, suck it up and get back out there and do your homework. And so that is what I think people like. I think that's what we do, and I think that's what a lot of what people don't like. And I don't think it's that complicated to understand what's going on in the Middle East. But the problem, in my view, with what's going on in the Middle East is people don't understand it. Why do these crazy, what I call Muslim terrorists, go after Israel? It's 2 simple reasons. It's not that complicated. Israel's small, and it's close. See, America's a long way away. We're across the ocean, and we're big. If we were little, and we were where Israel was, they'd be doing it to us. And so the reason these fights are so important to fight is because when they're done there, as these folks have said, they will be coming for us. So, what do we do about it? Well, I have a couple thoughts. The number 1 is, it's very simple. In World War II, we did not say to the Nazis, oh, man, the war's not going good for you. Lots of people are suffering. Maybe we can come up with a way for you to stay in power. Let's get you some food. Let's make sure you got power so you're comfortable as you fight your war. No. We bombed the crap out of them, and we fought them, and then they unconditionally surrendered. In Japan, we nuked them twice. Not once. They didn't get the message. We did it a second time. unconditional surrender. So the only policy that I support in the Middle East is that same policy, which is unconditional surrender. And part of the way that we get there is to do something that's very important, I think. And that is to not fight on their rhetorical field. See, the terrorism takes many forms. We know the physical terrorism. We know about the 1,200 people killed, the 250 taken hostage. But the terrorism reveals itself in many different ways. I see it all the time. It comes with claiming people are Islamophobes. That's simply used as a way to shut down discussion. The Miami Herald did a big, long investigation into me. They called me up one day, because remember, they've come up with this rhetorical battlefield. We'll get you as an Islamophobe, and you'll be a Trump. Call me up, they say, we've done this months of research on you, and we're prepared to write that you have been accused of being an Islamophobe. How would you respond? I said, I thought that was settled a long time ago. I'm not sure how this is news. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to say. Look, I said, I look at the original version of the word, Islam and fear. I said, yeah, I'm afraid. I'm the only member of the Florida legislature, only one who has 2 people sitting in prison for making death threats against me. Only one. There's nobody else who has 1. And I have 2. And what do both of these people have in common? They're apparently from the religion of peace. In my first week in Congress, I got 5 death threats. 5. That's 5 more than most of my colleagues will ever get. Same thing. These are things that are used in order to terrorize us and to make us afraid. But the thing is, I told my kids that I would never be afraid. The biggest thing that I've done since I've been in Congress, ironically, we did a hearing on anti-Semitism. They put me on the education committee. And the morning before that happened, my 17-year-old son, who I failed to make not go through the things that I went through, he called me up and he goes, Dad, would you wear a kippah today to the hearing? I'm not a super religious guy. I mean, I go to high holiday services, I go to Shabbat every now and again, but I've never worn a kippah every day in my life. And Jacob said, I want you to wear a kippah today for all of the kids on college campuses who don't feel safe to wear this. And I did. And I wore it that day. And then at the end of the day, he said, Dad, the reaction was great. I think you should keep wearing it until every kid feels safe wearing it on their own campuses. When your 17-year-old asks you to do something like that, that's what you do. Now, it does come with a downside. I'm also not kosher. So I went to a reception last week, and I'm looking at, there's the shrimp, and my hand starts going to it, and all of a sudden I got dirty looks. And I'm like, this is some back-ended way for me to become kosher. So I'm going to have to sneak my bacon in the morning or something like that. No. But who knows? Look, I believe God's got a plan for us all. And maybe this is his plan for me. But I need your help, because people like me, it comes at a cost. You help this organization, you help people like me. It's not easy to be the tip of the spear. And so I appreciate you being here to help people like me do what it is that I do. I'm going to close with one final part of the story about getting here. My mom died 5 days before I got elected to Congress. In fact, 35 years ago, I was a page for the House of Representatives. I did it for a year. No, nothing bad ever happened. So just so you know, that never had any of those issues. And I did it for a year. And one day my mom came to visit me. And we went to the stationery store. It's the souvenir store. It's in the same place today as it was 35 years ago. And when we were in the store, my mom saw something in that store. And she said, Randy, I want to buy this for you. It was $50. It was very heavy. I'm like, Mom, why do you want to buy this for me? And she goes, because I never know. You may need this someday. I think that you might. 5 days after my mom passed away is when President Trump put out his providential tweet. And when I called my dad, it had been a tough week, to let him know this had happened. I expected him, it had been a hard week for our family. I thought it'd make him happy. Instead, he started to laugh. This wasn't the reaction I expected. I go, Dad, why are you laughing? He goes, well, because you think your mother was proud of you. I said, well, of course she was proud of me. She goes, no, she actually wasn't proud of you. I said, why? She said, well, Randy, you had a Jewish mother, and you're not a billionaire, and you're not president, and you're not a doctor. So you did not live up to what your mother thought that your potential was. So clearly, she passed 5 days ago, she went up to heaven, and she did not waste any time. And so when I won on April 1st, I went to see if I could find this thing that she had bought me 35 years ago. It had been sitting in a box in my garage for all of that time. And if you come to my office, what you will see is something you cannot buy anymore. A steel Member of Congress logo that hangs on the wall right behind my desk. Everyone has a plan. The fact that you are here today means that God has a plan for you. This is his plan for me. And for my children, and for all of you, I promise you this. And for above all, my mom, who's watching every day, I will not let you down. Thank you all very much.